I'm Maureen Bellatori, and this is Spilled Salt, a podcast on the thrills and spills from the food, beverage, and agriculture industries. I have three guests today. They are Walt Duflock, Sachi Desai, and Rishi Pete, who make up AgTech Alchemy. AgTech Alchemy is a community for AgTech founders, investors, practitioners, and students, which hosts events in real life. They also share thought leadership in multiple channels, primarily on LinkedIn and in their Slack community. I'll give you a brief background on those three individuals because we don't go through their backgrounds on the discussion today like we typically do in interviews. And so just to give you a little bit of foundational understanding of these three powerhouses, Walt Duflock is a prominent figure in the agriculture and ag tech industries. He's currently serving as the Senior VP of Innovation at Western Growers. Walt leads efforts to accelerate the adoption and scaling of ag tech solutions that address critical challenges faced by specialty crop growers, including labor shortages, food safety, and water scarcity. Sachi Desai is a senior executive and expert in AI, machine learning, digital strategy, and partnerships in agriculture technology, currently serving as VP of AI, go-to-market, and partnerships at Bayer. Sachi has played a pivotal role in developing and executing strategies to deliver AI solutions to legacy industries with a focus on enhancing customer outcomes and productivity through advanced technologies such as generative AI. Rishi Pete is a prominent agri-food tech consultant, product manager, author, and podcaster based in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's the founder and managing partner of Metal Dog Labs, which is an independent consulting firm specializing in food tech, ag tech, and climate tech strategy, product, and data solutions. Rishi has over 20 years experience in technology with a focus on agriculture and food industries. Today's conversation is focused on what AgTech Alchemy is, how that group can help a number of different channels and groups of people such as farmers, startups, agribusinesses, corporations, any sort of company that touches ag tech, to have those audiences understand how the AgTech Alchemy group can be beneficial in helping them get better understanding and footing in the industry. And also, we talk about some of the challenges that are faced by ag tech across the board, both now and leading into the future. Enjoy the conversation. Hey guys, how are you?
How are you?
Good to have you.
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me. I am so excited to have all of you here with me today, and we're going to kick off by talking a little bit about what is AgTech Alchemy. Who wants to start us off with a little bit of background on what the group is?
I can start off a little bit real briefly, I guess. So AgTech Alchemy is a community-driven meetup group, essentially an organization that we're trying to establish to help people connect in real life again and around the intersection of agriculture and technology. It's a pretty niche space, so we figured, how about we try to bring us together, because there is a lot of people doing this, and try to help foster community, foster connections, collaboration as well.
It's an updated version of Macintosh user groups back in the 80s, right? For us old guys. And you get together and you get to see guys who are solving the same problems you are and nobody else is solving them. And you get a chance to catch up and break bread together live usually. And it made lugging all those big, heavy Maca bowls and all that stuff worth it. And except now that you're lugging, tractors and small robots around. So I guess it's even harder in some ways.
And why do you think it's important to do the in-person meetup? Because just as you mentioned with like Microsoft user groups, and you have a Slack community where people are, some folks are staying in touch there as well. What's the importance of in-person to you?
Yeah,
I'll launch and I'll let you guys follow on. I think for me, I do probably 30 to 40 events a year, right? Some local, some not so local. And there's something about the agriculture community that the AgTech community has embraced, where being in person is just better. You don't know how it's better, you don't know why it's better, but you know it's better. And I get that reinforced every time I go to more events, and we have these alchemy style events. And it's so great to get folks together in person. You never know when someone's looking to make a move, looking to start something, looking to found something, and you just don't get as many people comfortable sharing that like in a Slack or in an online chat. But when you get a beer in them and start talking to them over, maybe a couple beers, guess what? Oh, I was looking for a founder I didn't know, and we've had the pleasant experience of pushing some of our friends to say, "Why don't you announce your startup at one of our events?" And they'll announce it, and then things get going. So we think it stirs up trouble in two ways: people looking to make a move can make a move, people looking to start stuff can start stuff, and people looking to get together with like-minded people can do that, many times a year, hopefully.
Yeah, I think some of it is also some hangover from the pandemic. Completely agree with Walt. So, a little bit of an origin story here, right? How did AgTech Alchemy get started? And we had somebody visiting from the East Coast to California, and they said, "I want to meet a few people." And we just put up a LinkedIn post saying, "Hey, we'll be here at this restaurant at this time. If you work in this space, show up. And we are not paying for your food and drinks. Just to be clear, you pay for your own food and drinks." And 50 people showed up. And it was a big shocker to me and Walt and all of us.
Yeah.
And that's where we realized like there's something real about, even though we are talking on video call right now, there's something about meeting in person. You can look somebody in the eye and really understand their body language and what are they going through. AgTech is not a fun place to be right now. It's challenging. And so we need as much support that we can get from others. And that's another goal of AgTech Alchemy, right? Like we don't have an agenda. We're not trying to sell you a product. We are not trying to get you do something for us. All we want is people to get together, talk about issues, and help each other. I think that is really helpful, and that's the feedback that we've heard again and again.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, before you chime in there, Sachi, I think that's an interesting angle to the idea of we don't have an agenda, right? Because typically, like you mentioned, well, you go to 30, 40 events a year. I know Rishi and Sachi, I'm traveling. We're all on the road a lot, right? But it's where do we have an opportunity to overlap, and what is the ability to have some of those in-between conversations too?
No, that's exactly it. As Rishi was saying, the pandemic accelerated this or amplified it, but generally a lot of these folks in AgTech are really working, even if you work at a big company like Bayer or Corteva or Syngenta, you're working in a smaller group than the rest of the organization. And so you feel lonely, I guess is the best way of saying it. And so being able to be and connect with others that are going through the same thing is really powerful. And then, you mentioned this in the beginning, there's virtual spaces, but it's exhausting and tiring to be on Zoom call. Like, I don't know for many of you, but for me, I'm on 6 to 8 hours of video calls a day. I don't want to get on another call with just random people that I don't know, to be honest. And the other part about this is
you don't even like getting calls with us, and us.
Exactly. Putting maybe aside Walt, a lot of the folks in AgTech or at least what I've noticed is that we tend to be more introverted. Mm-hmm. And so even if we need help or we know people are doing certain things, we're not going on Slack and saying, "Hey, come talk to me," right? But in person, maybe there's something about the drinking or the food or just being bored and hoping to talk to people. You're getting these people to have these conversations that they normally would not have just because they're not in the position to have that conversation or not comfortable with it. And it seems to be, and Rishi's point about the no agenda seems to help foster that even better than you would if you're going to like a conference. You seem to have to go through an agenda and you seem to have to hit a bunch of boxes, and you don't have to do that here.
Right. So I got a survey from the three of you earlier this week about the idea of your own convening that is intentionally an event to come together and fly people out, because typically you have sort of latched on to some other gathering that's happening, right? And it's like it's an AgTech Alchemy meetup that is in line with, like, Sachi, I met in person in Fargo during AgTech Week. I know you guys did something around World Agritech, and so it's typically been like an add-on, right, of some other convening. But you're thinking about doing your own convening, is that the primary purpose, is so that you can sort of put it together without the mess of another agenda?
No, I mean it's less about the mess. I think those collaborations have been very helpful, like what we did in Fargo or in World AgTech. People are already coming. It's much easier for them to go to another event for a couple of hours, which they're excited about, right? And so we like that excitement that people have. And at the same time, we've heard that there are a lot of events which have become very stale for them. They go there because they've been doing that for many years. If you think about World AgriTech, right? If I can bring them up here, I've been going to that event for 5-6 years, and last 3 years I have not attended a single session other than the one that I was in. And if I had the choice, I would not attend my own session. Hopefully AI can solve that
That's
problem.
the kind of candor you're looking
bot.
for, Marine, right there.
That's right.
So that we also feel there's a demand for a different type of gathering, right? And we feel we have something, we don't know exactly how to articulate it well, but with the events that we have done with AgTech Alchemy and how Walt and Sachi and others, they present themselves, I think we have something there that people are drawn to, and we want to experiment. And that's why we haven't sort of finalized that we're going to do this event. We want to be very thoughtful. Like if there's demand for a certain type of event, then we are ready to provide and meet that demand. So it's more about providing a different type of experience to people, which is much more open, honest discussions. And to the earlier points that Walt and Sachi made, this is more about how can we help each other to solve some of these problems. So that's the goal there.
Just building on what Rishi's saying, it's to create almost a collegial kind of event where you're treated like an adult, I think, is the big thing. Like, I don't want to be forced to go from one thing to one or choose something and then also try to get a conversation in with somebody that I might only see for a few minutes. It's about, can we create a theme of conversation and discussion rather than being presented to or talked to based on just talking points? Have a meaningful discussion in two ways, both the audience and the potential panelists, if we design it that way, on a topic or a theme of topics, right? Like Walt's really passionate about maintaining innovation or keeping innovation alive in agriculture, right? And trying to figure ways to fund that. Rishi's passionate about just taking out the inefficiencies in the industry and really trying to move us forward in technology and so forth. And so it's this idea, how do we bring together a curated group of people that normally don't always interact with each other to talk more like and treat and act like adults, where you can have a conversation, you can eat when you're hungry, not wait for something or be forced to eat whenever, and not have to digest 15 minutes of a conversation, have an hour of a conversation, have time to decompress around the thoughts of it, etc., and really just have a like a collegial environment for a day or a day and a half.
So,
Maureen, I would just jump in real quick. I think the interesting model is, again, and of course, I love them, but the Macintosh user groups, right? They had regional events, and then at critical mass, you had a twice a year gathering of all of them, right? And so we've been lucky. We've got support from other regions besides just the Bay Area. And as that audience grows, you have opportunity to do stuff in Fargo, in Sunnyvale, in LA soon, right? In Chicago, potentially in other areas. And what that creates is the opportunity for some local leadership to help us out in supporting each region. And then that annual get together where everybody rallies, where it's worth it to come in and make a trip out of it. We're not sure how that architects yet, but I've seen parallels in past lives where I'm like, okay, that feels like there's a lot to be learned there from that model for this AgTech Alchemy Day. And we have a lot to figure out, but that's, as I think about it, big picture, that to me is exciting. Having regional leaders with regular meetings and then some kind of national presence. Because I'll tell you, the AgTech companies and the ag companies have both come to our events and really enjoyed the discussion and really enjoyed hearing from the folks that are doing the work, because at the end of the day, the stars for AgTech Alchemy are the startups that are doing the work I've been an operator for a better part of 30 years at startups. Now I'm in ag tech. I've been an ag operator, doing cattle with my family for part of a fifth generation thing. The only thing harder than ag these days is ag tech because of the capital constructs and all the challenges, right? And so anything we can do to get these guys in front of the folks they want to talk to, which is people who might buy their startup or invest in their startup, people who might buy their product or want to hear more about their product, that's absolutely mission one for us.
So one of the challenges I have found with World AgriTech in particular is
they're going to love the amount of conversation they're getting in this podcast.
I'm sure they are. I don't know if they're going to love what I'm about to say. That's the beauty of being neutral with all of this stuff is, we can speak freely. So what I don't like about major events like World AgriTech is that because it's a pay to play opportunity where the folks who are on stage, like Rishi, are that it's typically that you've paid for that opportunity or someone has paid for that opportunity for you to be up there presenting to the room. And so there is a level of bias, right, for the people who have the mic. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this, and the lack of the farmer in the room, right? And so I think the fact that your approach to all of these events and the importance of gathering and making it approachable for the startups, the agribusiness companies, and the farmer to all have access to these events, I think is fantastic, but it also gives an opportunity for a different type of discussion because of that don't have an agenda or neutrality that you mentioned.
I think just given our age ranges, right, from 45 to 59 or so, right, we're sort of coupled around.
Unbelievable. You have no shame.
Look, I'm not proud of that.
I will not let your relative inexperience be a problem for this podcast.
So we have this kind of bias.
Did you just call Maureen 45? She looks much younger than that.
I am younger than 45. Thank you.
I was talking about us three, not excluding the host.
But it's not clear. Yeah, it's not very clear. As usual, when you talk such, it's not clear what you're saying.
The thing I think what I want to try to say is, though, growing up around that Gen X kind of time frame, right? There's a lot about not cowtailing to the man, and I think that's inherent in what we're trying to do. So this idea of no agenda, it's more about not creating any kind of biases or pay to play or anything like that perception. It's having a frank, open, blunt discussion with all the people at the table, not just a select handful that have because you miss out a lot, right? Farmers is one group that often at World AgTech are missing, but then they're very present at events like Farm Progress and others. But there you're missing a lot of the startups, right?
Right.
And then, investors who usually tend to bitch the most about this, they don't travel, right? Like they're like, oh, we shouldn't, San Francisco's awful, but then they don't leave San Francisco. So it's like, how do you find the right way to bring these groups together? And this idea of no agenda, being very adult and discussion oriented, this idea of Chatham House rules, so you can be very frank and blunt as well. And then being very mindful of who you're inviting, because we don't want to turn into a sales event. We want to turn it into an event where the industry pulls forward, right? Of like, to Walt's point, funding's challenging, but I don't think AgTech's necessarily given a reason to be funded either, right? I think Walt and Rishi have written really nice posts and articles on this, right, over the last 6 months, 12 months. And why is that, right? Maybe we're just in the same bubble, talking the same things, not sharing that conversation. That was one of our big reasons for AgTech Alchemy, is to break through the bubble for each of us.
I think that's so important, especially with I write content on LinkedIn a lot. And one of the things that I have found is it has become a big echo chamber, that there is a lot of the same content that's just getting, regurgitated again and again from some different voice, but they're all saying the same thing. So what I loved about the Fargo AgTech Alchemy event too is not only the new opportunities to meet different people in the room, but also, like you're mentioning, the concept of being able to kind of just float around. And when you're at a conference with a structured agenda, you don't have the opportunity to do that either. So you're talking a lot about the importance of bringing these people together. I'm not going to disagree with you there. Why you? Like, why take this on? What made the three of you want to come together and tackle this?
I have a quip, but somebody else might have a serious answer. I think it was Walt. So since Rishi and Walt are both married, I think their wives got tired of just hearing about AgTech at home, so they just were told to take it outside. And I think that's where that's what at least my belief is. But they probably have a much more pleasant and thoughtful answer.
There's probably a shred of truth to that, Sachi. And I will tell you, but I know my wife listens to some of the calls as I'm walking around in the home office because, man, she can play back some of this stuff better than I can. It's impressive. And I'm like, you're not even in the business. And she goes, I could fake my way through this stuff if I had to. No, I think
next podcast we should have her instead of Walt. I think
no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I am the downgrade and a half. No, I would say, when you think about, why us? I think for me, I really love working with these guys because we bring three different backgrounds, three different perspectives, three different kind of subject matter expertise areas, which is nice. You don't want a complete overlap, right? And I think the piece that I try and be true to is staying true to that fifth generation farmer who's still talking to guys farming on our ranch who are still living. They're living every day the challenges of California ag, and they know that ag tech is needed and they want to help. But who's got 6 hours a day to talk to startups, right? There's no way. And so I try and be true to the grower background that I have. I try and be true to the startup operator background that I have, knowing that it's hard. And for me, if we can get AgTech Alchemy together, and if every startup can get 3 to 5 learnings or new introductions per event, that's a huge win. And if you start getting 50 to 70 people per event, and you start doing the multiplication on number of synapses you fired, that is just awesome. So for me, it's the overlapping but not the same backgrounds that we have, and that constant goal of just, man, if we can bring our 3 sets of alchemy to the table every event, good things are going to happen.
Yeah. What do you have to add to that, Rishi?
No, I agree with both Walt and Sachi here. I think this difference not difference, but the variety of experiences that we have, which, as Walt rightly put, overlapping, but still bringing different perspective. I think that is super important. Also, I think, that we even though it's called AgTech, people focus a lot about tech and startups, but we also bring other perspectives. Like, for example, if you've read anything that Walt has written, he's very passionate about what policy and regulation does to different industries, especially agriculture. I think that's a very important perspective, which I often forget as somebody who's focused heavily on tech. So it's a great, refreshing reminder to me and to people who come. Like, hey, there are other things which also matter. Also, living in California, you might feel that ag is only fruits and veg. Because that's what is mostly here in California. So you want to make sure, Sachi said something about sort of piercing through those bubbles. And Sachi works with a lot of commodity row crop growers all over the world, right? So we bring that other perspective as well. So I think basically what we are trying to do is, irrespective of which part of AgTech you work in, we might have something interesting to say and help you connect with the right folks through those events. I think that is very important. I think that's the main reason. And the name AgTech Alchemy, maybe Walt, you can talk about this. It was sort of specifically chosen because there's some fun around it. But maybe Walt, if that's relevant.
No, that's true. There is an interesting backstory there. I was doing a newsletter for a little while before I realized guys like Shane Thomas and Rishi are crazy. And how do they do this every week? Now, granted, I put out content most weeks, and it can be large, but boy, the prospect of doing a newsletter was just overwhelming for me, kind of just really daunting. But I did put out about 15 or 17, something like that, issues of agri-food tech alchemy. And the whole purpose of that newsletter was to try and be that alchemist resource to try and make things happen. And when we were thinking of how to brand this activity with the three of us, we were throwing on names, and I said, I don't necessarily like agri-food tech as much, and my view on agri-food, the alternative proteins versus conventional farm gate ag. I mean, I've made it pretty clear on that. So agri-food tech is a space, whatever you think of it. But I like the alchemy word. And so we went with AgTech because AgTech is meant to be the behind the farm gate or on the way to the consumer piece of it, not the food piece of it as much. So the delivery services and stuff we don't focus on. Some of that other stuff we focus on the guys doing the work on the farm, doing the growing, doing the work, doing the soil analytics, doing the agronomy work. And so AgTech, because it's kind of not the food part, Alchemy, because that magic of when you can create innovation out of nothing from a guy just standing in the field talking to a farmer and figuring it out, that is the magic right there.
And I think this highlights something more something that's critical. Why us, right?
Mhm.
Is the combination of unfettered enthusiasm and unnatural amount of passion for the space. I argue that AgTech as a investable asset class is probably really small and narrow, but there's so much passion for it and so forth, and it makes sense, right? And so I think the three of us have a high level of enthusiasm. Even if we might be introverted or shy sometimes, we're willing to do stuff, to be loud at places, to get people excited about something that we have a high level of passion for. So I think that's the real thing. Is there's a lot of people that have expertise like us or more. There are a lot of people that probably talked about this stuff generally, but you need to catalyze that, and that passion and energy and enthusiasm are required to do that. And I know we don't seem the most passionate right now, but we are very passionate, I think, about this space.
No, I think that passion comes out. I think that your point is an interesting one about, not being outgoing people and still kind of forcing it to get to put these events together and host them despite that, because it's so important to you to bring these people together is an interesting angle.
I mean, as we joke, Maureen, Dave Friedberg could do this, and he'd probably do it better than us. But he's kind of busy doing All In Ohio. So
Yeah.
we'll do it.
Yeah.
He's more podcast than anything else, isn't he? At this point now that I'm watching.
That's probably true. Actually, All In is just killing it. Good on you, Dave.
I love it. So if we switch gears a bit to, we've been talking a lot about the industry kind of interwoven into why you've created AgTech Alchemy and why these convenings are so important. But thinking about about some of the outcomes that these events can lead to, what do you think are some of the biggest challenging aspects of the industry that need to be solved that convenings like this could contribute to?
I'll start with one basic one. It's just level setting on basic understanding of what's been done and what's been investigated. A lot of times, knowledge and education aren't really are asymmetric, and so just having clear understanding of like, oh yeah, you're looking at a business model, subscriptions on APIs. People have done this, and this is why it works or doesn't work, right? And like, we don't need to keep reinventing the wheel or starting from point A. And so being able to just get knowledge across from people that have done it, and then people learning other stuff from others.
I think it's also one of the things I heard at the AgTech Alchemy event that I went to in Fargo was also shared issues, right? I was talking to a farmer and talking to some startups, and there was a lot of overlap of, yes, this is a problem that we don't think has been solved in AgTech startups and tech solutions, and the farmer saying, yes, this is a critical issue for us as well.
No, I think that's fair. Me wearing a bear hat, sometimes I hear more about, do you have funding? So it's generally a slightly different gap, but I think Rishi and Walt hear a lot of that. We also see folks just connecting that start to, which I get excited about most, is collaborating or partnering. So we've seen from the conversations, one team got funding in one of our events out of that. Another team found a place to do some tests and trials. Another group started partnering with another group on a potential opportunity around the digital space. And so this idea of fostering a better understanding of the space, knowledge sharing, good knowledge, right? Because there's also, to your point, there's an echo chamber, and echo chambers sometimes pick up hot takes, and they're not helpful, right? And so, like, I just think of it like how ESPN's gotten kind of crappy, right? These days, it's mostly just people yelling at each other, and we want to kind of stop that. And then the second part is this idea of collaboration, fostering collaboration amongst groups.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and the
think a
one
lot
thing
of
I
it
would add, sorry, go ahead, Rish.
uh, is around same vein as education. Like, so for example, you have startups and you have, funders, VCs, corporate VCs, family, whatever, right? Even corporates. And a lot of times what we see is that there is misunderstanding between what the person with money is looking for and what the person with the idea and the execution is looking for, right? And that mismatch or that lack of understanding sometimes causes a lot of issues, and we've seen that happen many times in AgTech, right? So that's another thing that we've seen. That's where we switch between sometimes startups presenting what they want to talk about. We've done events where VCs will come and say, this is what I'm looking for. And when you look at the audience, like, you see sort of nodding, okay, oh crap, I didn't know this is how you're thinking about this particular issue. So I think we feel that by bridging that knowledge gap, as Sachi is saying, we can hopefully reduce some of the friction that is there in the process, and this will lead to better, more efficient innovation. That is something Walt has been talking about quite a bit, right? So that's another aspect of how do you get these disparate groups together and make sure they have a shared understanding of how they approach a problem so that they can work together more effectively.
Yeah. The one other thing I'll add, Marine, is I think it's been really interesting as we have these events in different places like Salinas, like Fargo, like Sunnyvale. The Bay Area ones are really interesting because we need to do a better job, we AgTech, of getting Salinas Valley plugged into Silicon Valley. And our events, believe it or not, have actually been a good mix of that. We've had people bring friends to the events. We've had people make connections at the events. And from a recruiting standpoint, if you're a stealth startup, how do you recruit, right? You have to do it
Yeah.
in person a lot of times. And it turns out I've got a couple examples that I can't give you right now publicly, but I mean, I've talked to these founders the last couple of months, and they said, yeah, that event from last summer, I actually have some conversations still ongoing. They haven't hired, but they've definitely unloaded. I'll say it this way: they've definitely created a new set of conversation opportunities that wouldn't have happened without that event, and that's been great to see because it's hard to get Silicon Valley folks plugged into AgTech, and if we can help, we'd love to.
Mm-hmm. I think what you're all are talking about, this idea of, and you spoke to this mostly just now, Rishi, this idea of like a disconnect in understanding of what the investor needs, what the startup needs, and what the farmer needs, and how these events and this opportunity for casual conversation can make it possible to bridge the gap in some of those understandings to make innovation possible. But those are, the ability to do that is based on kind of the happenstance of what comes up in the discussions, right? And so you're doing a bit of, you've started to do kind of, you can sign up for 2 minutes of a pitch to kind of explain your company sort of thing. I'm curious if there's any other ways that you've thought about facilitating that kind of understanding that still allows you to stay unstructured, but that allows you to prompt some of that fact finding.
So when we started, we did a couple of different kinds of things to see what would resonate or what works well. And so Rishi came up with the idea on the first one, saying, "Hey, it'd be cool if we get a few startups to talk, right? They always want to talk, but they don't usually have an audience, right?" And so, literally, our first big event, our first real event in September, you had people standing on concrete dividers, screaming out what their company does for 2 minutes. And we thought, oh, there's a lot of excitement. People were excited. And it was a kind of way to celebrate as well these startups, right, that don't always get awareness. The next event, we thought it'd be kind of interesting to have the investor tell what they do and what they look for and like how you should approach them. The excitement wasn't the same there, and the investors were a little bit more shy about talking about this kind of stuff, right? But the startups at least understood who was who, right? We had smaller events where Walt did this a couple of times, which was having folks just introduce themselves, right? Like literally like a powwow circle. So when you had 30 people, it was a lot easier to do. When you're getting to like 70 to 80, that's not possible anymore. And then we also did a panel type of thing where we were going to put out topics and let people discuss around topics. What we've seemed to found is the pitching seems to work the best. The other things are not as resonating with folks, so we try to take them offline or try to create content to help exploit that. So it helps kind of act as thought starters or like conversation icebreakers.
Mm-hmm.
To create this, but it's kind of like water. Things just seem to move together on their own.
Yeah.
At least as of now, we've seen. I don't know, Rishi or Wall, if you guys feel differently or want to add.
Yeah, maybe this might be a good time to talk about the quarterly as well, right? That was something that we published, and the next one is coming out here in a couple of weeks as well. Maybe Sachi, if you want to talk about that, right? I mean, the first one, you were the driving force behind it, and what was the thought process behind that?
So one of the things is we heard people give us feedback and so forth. There was an event we threw in December, and one of our community members owns a small theater, and so we thought it'd be kind of fun to do like a fireside day, right? Like where we would just pontificate and talk and let the audience talk back as well and so forth, and just so we had like 8 topics we picked, or 5, something like that, and we wanted the audience to talk in, right? And we had bourbon and wine and stuff, so people could really get lubricated and really just let unleash. And what it turned out was just people listening to Walt, Rishi, and I bullshit for about 3 hours or 4 hours. No one left, and I was shocked. I didn't know what to think of it. I think Walt's more used to having that kind of audience. I am not. But it was just like kind of like listening at a farmer's, like a diner, right? And just hearing people talk, right, and come in and out as they're going. And I came from
part diner, part therapy session, right?
And we were thinking about, like, there's a lot of this content we're regurgitating better people who wrote it, right? And so we thought, what if we put this into a quarterly to get some of those great writers that are all over. Not some are well known, so Rishi is really well known. Some are lesser known, right? But putting out really good content in very specific spaces. Can we put that together? Try to have a common theme of somewhat that organizes this information and puts it in a logical sequence so people could read, a piece from Shane, then transition to a piece from Rishi and realize these are actually building on each other, and then transition to other folks who provide content, and essentially get a better worldview of what they should be thinking about. In this case, the first one was really focused on around of, hey, the way startups and AgTech have been operating today and investing is operating, it hasn't been the best outcome. But you shouldn't be discouraged. There's a lot of opportunity coming, and here's the way to better frame your this opportunity to go capture it, and really create a primer of how do you go extra money. And it turned out the document was a good way to expose lesser known thought leaders in the space that people should be aware of. A new way of putting that content together, right? Organizing your head, and is not always natural. And it turned out it became a pretty successful hit. The downloads, the feedback were, I think, really positive. Rishi got more of the feedback, so you could share that. But so then we thought we could keep doing this around themes. Now the bottleneck is Sachi's editing skills, but Rishi and Walter put really great content together. We have as Rishi alluded, we're going to have another one coming up shortly around the theme of AI by Ag, and we're trying to bring in also outside ag tech voices. So folks that are like Dylan Patel, who writes a really popular newsletter in semiconductors called Semi Analysis, contributing. Isabella Bacqua, who's a journalist for the Wall Street Journal, she's contributing a piece, etc., about just thinking about AI in ag for us, especially.
Yeah. The quarterly is like second city to whatever Saturday Night Live is, right? We're the warm up act for the.
Yes. And I think that this bringing outside voices is such an important topic. I'm glad, Sachi, you touched on it, right? And this is something that I think, Sachi does a great job as well, but I think Walt does a really nice job given his experience with like eBay and other places that he has worked, right? And he will bring the mental models and the experiences that he's had there, which were nothing to do with ag, but like how do they translate here and what are the learnings here, right? I think that is a very important piece that I personally feel sometimes is missing. Like we are so much in that bubble that we don't pay attention to what's happening outside. And that was one of the reasons we made a conscious decision to bring outside perspectives in the quarterly. And so, Sachi mentioned a couple of people, another professor called Hollis Robbins. She is working in higher education and she's talking about AI in higher education, right? And when we first approached her, she's like, it's AgTech quarterly, like what am I going to do? And then we explained to her, like, okay, that makes sense. And her piece has very valid applications to what's happening in ag, and people are worried about losing their jobs and all that, right? So I think that is another piece that you will see us do more and more of. How do we bring either from our own experiences from outside ag, and how do we bring out other perspectives inside ag from outside ag? I think that is very important as well. And if we do decide to pull off that event that you got a survey about, one of the things Walt Sachi and I have been talking about is like maybe we get a couple of speakers who have nothing to do with ag, but come in and provide their perspective. It's not like a celebrity football player talking about motivation. I mean, those are fun, but something which is relevant and applicable to outside experience applicable to ag.
Yeah,
Who
absolutely.
doesn't love meeting a former Super Bowl winning 49er? Come on.
Yeah, right?
They're too expensive.
Yes. Find a farmer that's a former NFL player, and maybe you can you can get them there. So you're just referring to it as a quarterly, but it's a newsletter, right? It's a quarterly newsletter, right, of information that you're sharing. The quarterly that you're referring to?
No, there's an actual quarterly. It's like published in the same style as a McKinsey quarterly. So
Okay,
the first
got
one
it.
is about 120 pages, and that's what
Oh,
we're
wow.
trying to aim around. Anywhere from about 8 to 12 independent authors, and then we provide some thematic elements as well. So if you ever see a McKinsey quarterly or like Monocle, the magazine, that's the vibe and aim we're trying to pursue there.
Very cool. I love that angle. I think the other thing, and Rishi and I have talked about this before too, that you don't have to do it all, so it doesn't have to be these meetups and the quarterly and LinkedIn content and a podcast that's getting syndicated everywhere and all the things. You can just do what you can do, and it's adding value to the community. And I think also the fact that you're not trying to do it all allows you to be effective in those efforts too.
Yeah, that's well said.
Totally agree. Yeah, no, we're not going to do it all. In some cases, it's too late and too much work to do it all. Rishi's got the newsletter down right. We've joked about a podcast, but we know how much work it is, right? So for now, it's quarterly, it's events. Is there an annual event? We'll see. It's the Slack, and to your point, that's about all we can do. And then at that point, LinkedIn and social media for us, Twitter, et cetera, becomes mainly just distribution.
Right, exactly. Yeah, amplification of the stories that people need to hear. I think the other thing, one of the things that's talked about a lot in the ag industry also is until you're in, it's hard to get in. Right? That there's a lot to understand about the nuance of agriculture. And so what I love about the AgTech Alchemy platform and the way that you are syndicating that information and elevating either internal voices or external voices and kind of the need to know of the industry is that it makes it possible for newcomers, whether that's a new startup who's developed something that is trying to find an application in ag, or someone who is a farmer who developed something who is trying to understand the startup world, that the AgTech Alchemy platform and all of those channels can be a good place to get what they need.
I'll push back a little bit just on this point. I think it's both sides, right? And so like what I learned is, so my background is not agriculture. I grew up next to a farm and all that, and if I want to say I'm like a 30th generation like mango farmer in India, right? Like we still have our little plot of land, but I'm not, right? I worked as an engineer for the Department of Defense and whatever. But the nice part was I came naive and fresh, right? So I bring a lot of concepts that I don't know better and I could try out, right? And there's not a bias and so forth. But ag sometimes acts like a club, right? That they don't want to let other people in. And so AgTech Alchemy is a sort of a nice bridge to let those voices in. And by coming there, we seem to also validate them. So then the people on the other side of the fence, the folks working in agriculture, be it a farmer, be it a retailer, be it a developer, innovator, they're more willing to also engage those folks because they're like, they've come out and done this. And I'll use Walt's example of the Mac meetup groups, right? Of back in the day. I think a lot of people on their own kind of come off standoffish. but you put them in a room, they just want to really geek out about stuff, right? They just want to make sure that the person they're geeking out to, even if they don't understand, is passionate about the same topic, right? They don't want to bore them. I think if you show up to like an AgTech Alchemy event, I think the one common denominator everybody has is they're passionate about the topic, regardless of how much they know or don't know. They're passionate, and so they're willing to give each other a lot of time and space to communicate and contribute and educate as well.
Yeah, great point. So, thinking, final questions here about, again, the industry at large. What are some of the other things that you think the ag tech industry needs in order to be successful that are not currently happening?
I guess
Well,
you want to go. Well, no, go for it.
no, I was going to say, I think part of it is we have to help startups adjust to the new reality, right? And that is we are capital constrained, but we have tools thanks to AI and other stuff that we can do, more development faster than ever, right? And so I tell this story a lot already the last couple of weeks. It shows if you're a startup pitching what used to be 3 to 5 years and 3 to 5 guys and 5 to 10 million, and the new world order is that needs to be 1 to 2 guys and 18 to 24 months and maybe a million in capital. That's a whole different thing, right? And so I think part of our opportunity writ large, well, it's two things. It's number one, let's help the startups get more capital efficient by understanding what they can build faster and then what they need to pitch. And it's keeping the investors and the media who went nuts and crazy for vertical farming and alternative protein from doing it again. So remind them it already, so they don't have credibility, right? And I do that a lot, and help them understand that. To the earlier point about pattern matching, now that we've seen vertical farming and alternative protein, let's shy people away from those spaces and let's watch out for the next wave of them, which could be ESG, sustainability, and climate smart if we're not careful. If those startups can't tie those benefits around sustainability and regenerative and ESG and all this stuff to farmer value propositions with clear economics, they will fail. And so my job is to help that next set of startups. Look, if you've got a messaging pitch that works for an investor and you got money, good job. Can you actually convert that to a deck convert that deck to a message to a farmer that works for them with economics that they care about? Better job. In most of the cases, it's I've got the first part nailed, I don't have the second part. So I think it's our job to sort of help the overall ecosystem orient itself around the right segments with the right pitches with today's awareness that we can build stuff faster. We need to build stuff faster, right? You're going to lose if you're coming with that first model of the 5-year, capital intensive against a guy who's 2 years less capital intensive. You're going to lose every day of the week. Let's help you understand that so you can retool.
I'll kind of extend what Walt's saying, but slightly different. What we seem to focus on is either a capability in the industry or solving for a particular point solution. We don't take a step back and saying, what am I actually solving for? Or not, and basically through conversations with Walt and Rishi, right? I always ask, like, what was vertical farming actually trying to solve for, right? Was, you would hear a variety of things. It's sustainability, or it's for energy, access, right? Distribution, et cetera. And it's like, well, what is it, right? What are you actually solving for? You can't be all of them, right? It's hard. And so I think what we need to get better at understanding the industry is first tell me what you're solving for, then start to figure out what are the steps you need to take to actually get that solution there, right? Don't come to me with an AI tool. Come to me with like, okay, I'm going to improve agronomic knowledge at the advisor's fingertips to better impact the farmer, or I'm going to make it easier to connect cables in my tractor because by doing this stuff, right? And so start there and work backwards from that. I think we need to do a better job educating what are those big macro challenges and things that need to be solved for, and then letting people start to look through the different innovation, how you might apply it.
Rishi, what do you have to add?
No, I think both of them covered really valid points. And I think this idea of, there's a lot of zero-sum game thinking in ag. If not a lot, there's definitely enough to cause issues. And I think based on sort of what Walt and Satya are saying, I think that's another thing we should think about as to how can we increase the size of the pie, which can be challenging, but I think we need to challenge ourselves to think like that, because that is what is going to create more collaboration between different companies, different organizations. And problems that people are trying to solve are extremely difficult, and it is unlikely that one person, one company can solve a whole bunch of problems. And so we need to work together, and people can only work together if they feel that both sides are getting value. And so that's another thing that we want to, as part of AgTech Alchemy, push for is how can 1 + 1 be more than 2? Because if that's the case, then people will work together, and then we have some chance of solving these hairy problems.
Yeah. I love it. So the importance of being nimble from the startup's perspective and being efficient with their capital. We had an episode with Adam Bergman on the podcast recently who spoke a lot about that. It was a great discussion. And the idea of making sure that we're solving the right problems in meaningful ways. Yeah, I think is well said all around. Fantastic. I appreciate you all taking a little bit of time to talk a little bit about AgTech Alchemy and helping people understand how they can get value from the group. What is the best way for people to stay on top of what's going on, understanding where the next meetups are happening, and stay on top of the chatter?
It's still going to be LinkedIn right now. So look up AgTech Alchemy, 2 words, on LinkedIn and share with other folks. And then there's the Slack community that if you want to have more discussions with folks that are really passionate, it's growing, and I'm always amazed how many conversations are going on there. So it's exciting to see people engaging in it.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you all so much. Hope to see you again soon at another AgTech Alchemy event. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you for listening to Spilled Salt. I'm your host, Maureen Ballatori. Spilled Salt is an Agency 29 production. Agency 29 is a brand-building firm for food, beverage, and agriculture brands. Learn more at agency29.com. For more information about the podcast, visit spilledsaltpodcast.com. Use that website to send me questions or recommendations for future guests. I always love hearing from you. Spilled Salt is available anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.